Today we're going to be ranking all 9 Templar assassinations from the very first Assassin's Creed game from worst to best. Now just to be clear, I'm not ranking these purely on gameplay alone. I'm also looking at how interesting each target is as a character and how memorable the assassination feels overall. So it's a mix of how fun the mission is actually to play, how much the target stands out as a character, and whether or not the whole sequence sticks with you after the credits roll. Some of these assassinations really showcase what made the original Assassin's Creed so unique and atmospheric, while others, well, let's just say they didn't quite hit the mark. Please keep in mind that this is just my opinion, and I encourage you to let me know your opinion in the comments. Also, almost 97% of my viewers are unsubscribed, so if you enjoyed the video, then why not consider subscribing to the channel to keep up to date with my videos. Anyway, with that said, let's begin. At number 9 we have Master Sibrand, the first Grand Master of the Knights Teutonic. And look, I'll be honest, this assassination has always been more frustrating than anything else. Now on the surface, the setup doesn't sound too bad. Sibrand has locked himself away on a ship at the Acre docks, and once you get to him, the actual kill is pretty straightforward. You either manage to sneak aboard and pull off a proper stealth assassination, or you end up in open combat and cut him down the less subtle way. That part is fine, it works, it gets the job done. The problem is everything else leading up to him. As most of you probably know, this game has one big weakness: altair can't swim. If you fall into the water, you don't doggy paddle, you don't climb out, you just instantly desynchronize. Normally this is just something you learn to live with, but in Sibrand's mission it becomes a nightmare. And here's the real kicker: the climbing detection in this game isn't always reliable. Sometimes you'll jump onto a post in the docks, only for altair to randomly slip off and fall straight into the drink. Other times he won't grab a ledge at all, even though you're sure you lined it up properly. It makes what should have been a cool infiltration mission feel extremely clunky. But it doesn't stop there, because of course this is Acre, and what do we have littered around the docks? Those drunk NPCs that shove you if you get too close. And normally that's just a minor annoyance. You stumble a little, maybe lose your balance, but here, one careless push from a drunk and congratulations, you're swimming with the fishes and desynchronizing instantly. It's honestly the most irritating way to die in the entire game. And that's ultimately why Sibrand lands at the very bottom of the list. As a character, he's not terrible. His paranoia makes him stand out a bit compared to some of the other Templars, and he has some decent lines. But all that potential gets overshadowed by just how frustrating it actually is to reach him. The mission highlights the worst part of the Assassin's Creed's early design. Instead of feeling like a master assassin pulling off a daring hit, you feel like you're wrestling with the game itself, or at least I do feel that way sometimes. So whilst I respect the idea of Sibrand, in practice his mission is easily the weakest of the 9 targets. This next target was actually a tough one to place on the list. For a while I was debating whether or not it should be at the very bottom spot, but in the end I decided that the sheer frustration of dealing with Sibrand's mission was worse. So instead, sitting just above him, we have Robert Désilets, the 11th Grand Master of the Knights Templar. Now don't get me wrong, Robert is a huge figure in the story. He's the Templar leader, he's been looming in the background the entire game, and narratively he's one of the most important people Altair has to face. But when you look at the assassination itself, it just doesn't deliver the same satisfaction as the others. The biggest issue for me is that the mission barely feels like a traditional assassination at all. And look, I get it, you don't always have to be stealthy or hidden to get the job done. An assassination in Assassin's Creed doesn't necessarily mean you have to creep up behind someone and stab them without being seen. As long as you eliminate the target, it counts. But with Robert, you don't even have the option. The mission sets you up by having Altair expose Robert's betrayal to King Richard. Richard doesn't know who to believe, so instead of siding with you straight away, he basically says, "I'll let God deal with it," and forces you to duel Robert in front of everyone. And while that moment is cinematic, it completely removes the freedom that makes the other assassinations so fun. There's no infiltration, no careful planning, no attempt to strike from the shadows. It's just a one-on-one sword fight. Personally, I really wish Ubisoft had given us some choice here. Imagine if the mission was structured with a timer. You'd have to try and assassinate Robert before he could reach Richard's camp and plead his case. That would have created tension, urgency, and an opportunity to pull off a stealthy kill in the middle of an army camp. Instead, the game railroaded us into a forced fight. Now to be fair, the sequence is memorable. The setting, the music, and the fact that you're confronting the antagonist in front of King Richard and his army, it has weight. From a story perspective, it absolutely makes sense why Ubisoft wanted this to be a big, dramatic showdown. But in terms of gameplay, it feels out of step with everything else in the game. For the most part, every other target gives you some freedom in how you approach it, whether that's blending in with the crowds, climbing vantage points, or striking from the shadows. Robert is the one exception, and for me that lack of choice really holds it back. So whilst the confrontation with Robert is certainly iconic for the story of Assassin's Creed, as an actual assassination mission it falls flat. It's unique sure, but not in the way I would have wanted. Next up on the list is Jubair al-Hakim, the man with a personal vendetta against, well, literature, books, scrolls, manuscripts. If it had words on it, Jubair wanted it burned. And while on paper that makes for a pretty unique target, the actual execution of his mission just doesn't live up to its potential. Let's start with Jubair as a character. Honestly, I find him to be the least interesting of all the assassination targets. Most of the other Templars at least have something about them that makes them stand out, whether it's Sabran's paranoia, Majd cruelty, or Garnier's twisted sense of healing. Jubair on the other hand doesn't have much going for him beyond the whole I hate books angle. Yes, it ties into the theme of controlling knowledge and manipulating people by denying them education, which is an interesting concept, but in terms of his personality and presence, there just isn't much to latch onto. The most memorable thing he does on screen is shove an innocent man into the flames during a cutscene, and that's about it. Now when it comes to the actual assassination, I'll admit the premise is unique. Instead of just having one obvious target marker, you're given multiple points on the map because Jubair has surrounded himself with men who all dress exactly like him. The idea here is that you need to track down the real Jubair among a group of lookalikes, which in theory is pretty clever. It sets up the possibility of making a mistake, assassinating the wrong person, and being forced to deal with the consequences. But here's the problem. That whole concept is basically made irrelevant by the investigations you do beforehand. By the time you actually go after him, you already have a map telling you exactly where he's going to be. So instead of stalking the city and piecing together clues, you just follow the markers until you stumble across the real guy. It makes what could have been a really tense and unique mission feel linear and predictable. And this is where I think Ubisoft missed a big opportunity. Imagine if Jubair's location was randomised on each playthrough. Maybe one time he's at the marketplace, another time he's burning books in a courtyard, and another where he's moving through the streets with his guards. From a lore perspective, sure, it might not line up perfectly, but let's be real, the game already takes liberties with lore. Altair can't swim in this game, despite actually being able to in the lore, and his accent is American, even though he was raised in the Levant. Both of these are due to reasons related to the Animus, so adding something like Animus variability to explain a shifting location wouldn't feel out of place at all. So while Jubair's assassination has a really creative idea at its core, the execution is too straightforward, and his character just doesn't leave much of an impression. Next up, we have Talal, the slaver of Jerusalem. What makes his assassination unique is that it's the only target in Assassin's Creed where the assassination always plays out as a chase sequence through the streets and alleyways. Now like Robert, this mission does suffer from the same issue of removing player choice. You don't get to decide whether you want to approach him stealthily, set up an ambush, or find a creative angle. Instead, the game forces you into a very specific scenario. You must chase him down. That lack of flexibility is a downside, no doubt. But compared to Robert's mission, I actually think Talal's forced setup works a lot better and is far more memorable. Here's why. When you first enter Talal's warehouse, the gate slams shut behind you, immediately telling you that Talal knew you were coming. Right from the start, the atmosphere shifts. Suddenly, you're not the hunter sneaking into an enemy's lair, you're the one being toyed with. Talal clearly has the upper hand, and the game makes you feel that tension as you see the cages filled with prisoners and his men swarming the area. But when you finally flush him out into the open, the mission flips again. Suddenly, Talal isn't in control anymore, you are. He bolts into the streets and now the power dynamic is reversed. You're sprinting across rooftops, scaling walls, vaulting through alleyways and closing in on him with Altair's unmatched agility. And that chase, in my opinion, is what makes this assassination so fun. It's easy to imagine the fear Talal must have felt in that moment. No matter how fast he ran or how many twists and turns he took, Altair was always faster. That sense of fear and dread catching up to him is such an important part of the assassin's identity, and this mission shows it better than most. It reminds you that it's not just about killing the target, it's about the fear the assassins impose on those they hunt. It may not offer freedom of approach like some of the others, but the choice it does give you, whether to rely on your parkour skill to chase him down efficiently or struggle as he gets away, is at least engaging. Garnier de Naples, where do I even start with this guy? Out of all the targets in the original Assassin's Creed, he's easily one of the creepiest, and he's one that has always stuck with me, even from when I first played the game as a kid. There was just something about him, the way he carried himself, the things he said, that gave me an unsettling feeling. What makes Garnier stand out is his personality. Without a doubt, he's one of the most twisted characters in the game. Unlike some of the other Templars who at least try to justify their actions with reasoning, Garnier feels like he's on another level. On the surface, he claims he's trying to help people, his words not mine, by experimenting on them. But the way he treats his so-called patients tells a different story. The cruelty he inflicts doesn't come across as a necessary evil, or even a misguided attempt at healing. It feels sadistic, like he's getting genuine enjoyment out of the suffering, and he just tells himself that he's helping people as a way to mask his own sadistic nature. That's what makes him so disturbing. He's not just a Templar with a mission, he's a monster hiding behind a thin excuse. The mission itself reflects that twisted nature. From the moment you infiltrate the fortress, the game doesn't waste time with long build-up. You're immediately thrown into a disturbing scene, a patient desperately trying to escape, and Garnier coldly ordering his guards to deal with him. The part that sticks with me the most, and I think a lot of players would agree, is when he commands them to break the man's legs so he can't run again. Even now, years later, that moment makes me cringe. It's brutal and it really drives home the cruelty of the man you're about to kill. As for the assassination itself, it's fairly straightforward compared to some of the other missions. Garnier makes his rounds among the patients, checking in on his twisted experiments, and that pattern is your opening. It's not overly complicated, you just wait for the right moment to slip in and strike. The simplicity actually works in its favour because it feels like you're cutting through the chaos of the scene to deliver justice right where it's needed. If I had to point out a flaw, it would be the same problem that crops up in a lot of the first game, the random NPCs who shove you around if you get too close. They can be a bit annoying here, but compared to the drunks hanging around on the Acre docks, these ones are easier to manage. The only real reason Garnier doesn't place higher on this list is because the assassinations that come after him are either more exciting gameplay wise or have stronger build-ups that make them feel more cinematic. The very first assassination in Assassin's Creed, and honestly what a way to kick things off. It makes total sense that Ubisoft wanted to make an impression with this mission, set the tone right from the beginning and show players the kind of brutality, tension and atmosphere they could expect throughout the rest of the game. When Altair enters the Souk al-Salah, the weapons market of Damascus, you immediately get a sense of how alive the world feels. The area is crowded with people, merchants are calling out, guards are on patrol. It's a perfect example of how Altair can use the city itself as cover, hiding in plain sight and blending into the crowd while stalking his target. This marketplace feels chaotic but also dangerous because somewhere in the middle of it all is a man who everyone fears. And that man is Tamir. Right from the start, he makes a lasting impression. His cruelty isn't subtle, it's right there in front of you. Before you even get a chance to go after him, he's already busy showing his true colours. As most of you remember, Tamir gets into an argument with one of the merchants, and instead of just scolding him or threatening him, he brutally stabs and slashes the man to death in front of everyone. It's shocking, it's uncomfortable, and it immediately tells you two things. One, this is not a man who deserves power, and two, if this is the first Templar you're going after, then the rest of the game is going to get a whole lot darker. That moment stuck with me because it really sold Tamir as someone who wasn't just a shady businessman or a corrupt leader, he was vicious. Now the assassination itself isn't groundbreaking in terms of mechanics. Tamir does his rounds through the market stalls inspecting weapons and overseeing his business while you wait for your opening, but the simplicity works here. If you play it right and strike from the crowd with stealth, the whole sequence feels smooth and cinematic, like a perfect example of what the series was trying to achieve, being a ghost in plain sight, moving through the crowd and striking before anyone knows what happened. For me, it was the combination of the atmosphere, the brutality of Tamir's character, and the way the assassination plays out that really sold me on Assassin's Creed as a series. The crowded market, the tension of blending in, and the satisfaction of taking down such a cruel man. It all comes together to create a mission that's still memorable years later. Tamir might not be the most complex target in the game, but as a first assassination he did exactly what he needed to do. He made an impact, he set the stage, and left you excited to see how much darker and more intense things were going to get from here. So now we're in the top 3, and this is where things really started to get tough. The remaining assassinations are all so good that deciding on the exact order was honestly a challenge. But taking the number 3 spot is William of Montferrat, and his mission is a standout for a couple of really strong reasons. The first reason is the setting itself. Unlike some of the other assassinations where your target is out in the open or tucked away in a smaller location, William is holed up inside a heavily fortified citadel in Acre. That means before you even think about reaching him, you need to break into this massive fortress, weaving your way across rooftops, slipping through alleys and either quietly taking out the archers on the walls or carefully sneaking past them. There's a real sense of scale and danger here. It feels like you're infiltrating a place you shouldn't be anywhere near, and that makes the build up to the assassination feel much more intense. The second reason this mission stands out is the sheer amount of variety it offers. Unlike targets like Robert or Talal, where you're locked into a specific scripted sequence, here you actually get to choose how you want to approach William. Do you go in loud, cutting down guards and storming your way to him? Do you take your time moving across rooftops, picking off archers one by one until you have a clean path? Or do you slip by everyone as quietly as possible, avoiding conflict altogether until you're right above your target? The freedom of approach here is one of the best in the entire game, and it really nails that feeling of being an assassin who controls the battlefield. Personally, my favourite way to deal with William is to get to the high ground above him. Once you've infiltrated the citadel, you find him in the courtyard surrounded by his men, and if you hang back for a moment, you'll overhear him berating his soldiers, and even having 2 of them executed right in front of everyone. It's a brutal but very effective way of showing his personality, ruthless, arrogant, and completely obsessed with discipline. And that's when I like to strike. I'll drop down onto the scaffolding, wait for the perfect moment, and then leap from above with the hidden blade. What I really appreciate about William's Assassination is that it manages to balance everything: the build-up, the atmosphere, the character moments, and the freedom of choice. The Citadel itself is one of the most memorable infiltration points in the game, and the fact that you can tackle it in so many different ways keeps it from ever feeling stale on repeat playthroughs. Majd Addin, out of all of the Templar targets in the first Assassin's Creed, he's easily one of the most ruthless. Unlike some of the other Templars who justify their actions under the guise of order, control, or even progress, Majd Addin's motivations are much more simple. He joined the Templars for power, nothing more, nothing less. And once he had it, he used it in the cruelest way possible, executing people in public, not out of necessity, but because he enjoyed it. He revelled in the fear and the suffering, and that sadism is what makes him such a striking target. The build up to his assassination does a fantastic job of selling just how dangerous he is. Your mission begins with you making your way to the execution square in Jerusalem, a place heavily guarded by patrols on both the rooftops and the streets below. By the time you finally reach the square, the stage is already set, literally. Majd Addin strides in like a tyrant, overseeing a twisted performance, accompanied by 4 supposed criminals that he plans to personally sentence to death. The entire scene has this dramatic, almost theatrical quality to it, with the crowd gathered in fear and anticipation. But what makes this assassination particularly interesting is that it isn't just about killing Majd Addin. You also have a decision to make. Among the 4 prisoners about to be executed is one of your fellow assassins, and if you hesitate too long, Majd Addin will carry out the execution himself. That time sensitivity forces you to act, adding a real layer of pressure and urgency that few other missions in the game deliver. On top of that, you can also choose whether to try and save the other 3 prisoners or let them die. It's not a decision that impacts the story in any lasting way, but it does add variety and makes the mission feel more alive. There's also a lot of flexibility in how you can actually eliminate Majd Addin, which is another reason why I enjoy this mission so much. You can climb up to a rooftop and line yourself up for a dramatic air assassination in front of the entire crowd. You can take a slower approach and blend with the scholars, making your way right onto the stage before giving the audience a shocking extra execution of your own. Or you might just do what I did by accident by bumping into one of those crazy NPCs in the crowd, getting shoved across the guard line and then triggering a full combat sequence as Majd and all of his guards turn on you at once. It captures everything that made Assassin's Creed unique: the sense of freedom, the weight of the assassination, and the feeling that you're striking down someone who truly deserved it. And finally, we've reached number 1, my favourite assassination in the entire game, Abu Nukud, the Merchant King of Damascus. This mission for me ticks every single box for what I want out of an Assassin's Creed target. His character is unique and interesting, the build up to the assassination is one of the most memorable in the game, and the variety in how you can approach him is just fantastic. It's everything I love about an assassination mission rolled into one. Let's start with the build-up because it's brilliant. The moment you step into Abul's lavish party, the atmosphere is immediately different from every other target. The courtyard is packed with guests, music is playing, wine is flowing, almost like you've walked into a place of safety rather than a trap. The sheer size of the crowd also works perfectly for altair because it gives you plenty of cover to blend in and stalk your prey without drawing attention. Then Abul himself appears on the balcony above, and at first he comes across almost like a gracious host. His speech starts off sounding genuine, but slowly his tone begins to shift. The mood in the courtyard darkens, the music fades, and then you see the fountain below suddenly begin to flow with wine. On a first playthrough, you might not think much of it. It seems like an extravagant touch from a wealthy man, but then the horror sets in. The wine is poisoned. The guests start to collapse and choke to death where they stand. The archers lining the courtyard reveal themselves and begin to rain down arrows. With the exits sealed, panic explodes through the crowd. People scream, shove, trample one another in desperation as the party becomes a massacre. This contrast is one of the reasons I love this mission so much. The chaos of the crowd, people choking, screaming, running in terror, is set against altair, calm and collected, moving silently through the madness with one purpose: to reach a bull and end him. And then there's the gameplay variety. Reaching a bull is half the fun because there are so many different ways to use the game's parkour to get to him. In my most recent playthrough, I climbed all the way to the top of the building, then dropped down onto a wooden beam, doubled back to swing down toward the floor, quietly took out the guard on the left, and then slipped in to assassinate a bull before anyone even realised what was happening. But that's just one approach. It's completely up to you, and that level of choice is exactly what makes an assassination feel rewarding. I also have to give credit to our bull as a character. Unlike some of the other targets who are simply cruel, paranoid or power hungry, our bull is layered. He hides his cruelty behind a mask of luxury and charm, luring people into his generosity only to poison and kill them when they least expect it. So that is my ranking of the assassination missions and targets in Assassin's Creed. These videos are opinion based, so please let me know in the comments your opinions, as I do enjoy reading them. Also, consider subscribing for more videos just like this, and with that, I hope to see you in the next video.